Hey everybody, in this video we're going to go through each state and see the last time they elected a Democrat for governor. In a bunch of states right now there's already a Democrat in office, but in others they haven't elected one in decades. We could do the same thing for the Republicans in another video, but let's get started here. We're going to go through each state alphabetically, and at the top we're going to use 6 different tiers of shading, and it's going to be one per decade plus those that are in office. As I made this, it was good to go through the states. Some of these governors I had completely forgotten about, a couple I wasn't even sure if I've heard of. So the first state is Alabama. They do not have a Democrat in office right now. The last time they elected one was back in 1998, and that was Don Siegelman. So it's been a while there for the Dems in the Magnolia State. Next, how about Alaska? Well, the last elected Democratic governor there was also the same year as Alabama, 1998, and that was 2-term Governor Tony Knowles. Next, in Arizona, Katie Hobbs is currently in office. For Arkansas, it's a red state, but you don't have to go back too far to find the last Democrat. That was 2-term Governor Mike Beebe, who was reelected in a landslide during the Republican red wave midterms of 2010. That goes to show it was not all that long ago. Even states in the Deep South were open to electing Democrats. In California, of course, that is going to be Gavin Newsom, who is currently in office. In Colorado, that's going to be Jared Polis, also currently in office. In Connecticut, we've got Ned Lamont, and in Delaware, we've got newly elected Governor Matt Meyer. What about Florida? When's the last time a Democrat had success there? For this, you're going to have to go back to the pre-Jeb Bush years. You're going to have to go back to 1994 and look at Lawton Childs. He got elected to his second term, and that was the last time Democrats were able to pull it off. Of course, later on, Charlie Crist was a Republican who became an independent, and then later on a Democrat, but when he got elected, it was as a Republican. One state north, we've got Georgia. This, we've got to go back more than 25 years again to the 1990s, and that familiar year of 1998. That's going to be when single-term Governor Roy Barnes got the job done for the Dems. He made other subsequent runs, but he was always defeated. So it's been a while in the Peach State there for the Dems. I know they would love to end that streak. In Hawaii, current Governor Josh Green is a Democrat. How about the red state of Idaho? This one, you're going to have to go back pretty far, all the way to 1990. So it's been more than 30 years since they last elected Cecil Andrus as a Democrat in this state. Andrus actually was elected 4 times as governor across different spans. In the Prairie State, Illinois has current Governor J.B. Pritzker. But next door, we've got a red state, Indiana. When is the last time they elected a Democrat? For this, we've got to go back to the new millennium, 2000. That was when Frank O'Bannon was reelected, who actually did die in office a few years later. Let's go to the other side of Illinois. We've got Iowa. This was a little while ago, but still within the past 2 decades. We're talking about 2006, and that was when Chet Culver was elected to his first and only term. He went on to be defeated in 2010. In Kansas, we've got current Governor Laura Kelly. In Kentucky, we've got current Governor Andy Beshear. In Louisiana, just before the last election, we had John Bel Edwards, a Democrat, reelected to his second term in 2019. Then we've got some states that have Democrats currently in office. We've got Maine and Janet Mills, Maryland and Wes Moore, Massachusetts and Maura Healey, Michigan and Gretchen Whitmer, and Minnesota and Tim Walz. Those states should be a little bit more interesting when we see the last time it was a Republican that was elected. How about back into the Deep South in Mississippi? This is another one of those ones that did not come to me right away, but we are going to have to go back to the 90s, but it is the late 90s, 1999, and that was Democrat Ronnie Musgrove, who was elected to his only term. He was defeated for re-election 4 years later. In Missouri, we don't have to go back that far, just to 2012, a little over a decade ago. That was Jay Nixon, who comfortably won re-election to his second term by more than 10 points. That was an impressive win in a state that was about to get a lot redder. In Montana, you might think of it as a red state, but Democrats won 4 consecutive elections for governor prior to 2020. So in 2016, Steve Bullock won his second term. So it's not a huge drought here for the Dems. It's within the past 10 years. In the Great Plains, we've got Nebraska. It's been a while here for the Dems. You've got to go back to 1994. That was the Republican Revolution, where they had a ton of national success. But in this state, Ben Nelson won re-election to his second term. It actually wasn't even close. He won by almost 50 points. That's a Phil Scott kind of a margin that seems almost unthinkable in today's political climate. West in the Silver State, Nevada. We don't have to go back that far. Just 2018 when Steve Sisolak won his first and only term. In the Northeast, in New Hampshire, the last Democrat to win for governor was Maggie Hassan in 2014. Then there are more current Democrats in office. New Jersey has Phil Murphy. New Mexico has Michelle Lujan Grisham. New York, Kathy Hochul. And North Carolina has newly minted Governor Josh Stein. Now let's take a look at North Dakota. This is another one of those that might be tough to come up with off the top of your head. For this, we've got to go back the farthest yet, back to the 80s, 1988. That was multiple political eras ago, but George Sinner won re-election to a second term, and it was also by a pretty big landslide at the time. In the Buckeye State, the only Democrat elected for governor here in the past several decades is Ted Strickland in 2006. He also went on to be defeated 4 years later. In Oklahoma, that might be a tricky one because everybody thinks this is an extremely red state, and it is. But as we've seen a lot of times before, even very partisan states are open to electing a different political party for governor. And in this state in 2006, they elected Brad Henry to his second term. And you might have guessed it was also by a massive margin. Now, some more current blue state governors: Oregon has Tina Kotek, Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, and Rhode Island, Dan McKee. But what about South Carolina? This one completely escaped me, but back in 1998, Jim Hodges won re-election to his only term. He was defeated 4 years later. Next, we've got the key state of South Dakota. This is the most notable out of all the states because for this, we've got to go back the farthest to find the last time a Democrat was elected governor. And not only that, this is the farthest back we would also have to go for the Republicans. In other words, it's the longest active drought or streak for either political party in terms of governor. So for this, the 1980s is not going to cut it. We've got to go back further. We're going to go back to before the bicentennial. We're talking about 1974. They served 2-year terms there until the mid-70s, but Governor Richard Knipe won the first 4-year term in 1974. He left office in 1979, and that was it for the Dems. They've never set foot back in the governor's mansion, not as an appointment, not as acting governor, nothing. So if you're looking for long political streaks, look no further than right here in South Dakota. The next state is Tennessee. It's another very red state today, but back in 2006, Democrat Phil Bredesen won re-election by a huge landslide. In Texas, a lot of people might recall the political trivia here, where Republicans started their dominant streak in 1994 with George W. Bush. He defeated incumbent Democrat Ann Richards. But 4 years earlier, in 1990, Ann Richards did win a single term for governor, and that was the last time the Dems were able to pull off the feat. 35 years later, they've yet to do it again. If we take a look at the Beehive State, Utah, that one we've got to go back even 10 years further to 1980. It's a very long time ago, but Scott Matheson won re-election as a Democrat by double digits. In Vermont, some people might think current governor Phil Scott is a Democrat, but he's a Republican. The last Democrat was right before Scott. 2014, it saw Peter Shumlin win his third and final term. In Virginia, in 2017, 2 elections ago, that was when they elected Ralph Northam, the last time that Dems had success here. In Washington State, they've got current governor Bob Ferguson. In the super red state of West Virginia, it wasn't that long ago, only 2016, this same year they elected Trump by a landslide. Jim Justice was elected as a Democrat at the time. He did later switch to become a Republican. So the Dems here, a lot less of a drought here than some other states. In Wisconsin, the current governor is Democrat Tony Evers. And finally, the last state is also extremely red. It's Wyoming. It's another 2-term governor that was reelected by a massive landslide in 2006. That was Dave Friedenthal, and since then, the Democrats have been shut out. So that's it. Those are all the states. And if you were to look back at the last time Democrats had success in these red states, and a lot of them won by giant landslides of 20 or 30 points, some of them were defeated for re-election in the early 2000s, but some of them did not become as red as they are today until the 2010s. Every state is unique. The issues at the time are also unique, as well as the candidates. So at a glance, the Democrats' biggest drought is obviously going to be in the South, but their single worst states are going to be Utah, North and South Dakota. Plenty of other states are on a 10 or 20-year drought for the Dems that are likely to continue into the near future. But it's always going to be interesting to see which state will snap their streak first. It's also going to be fun to take a look at the same thing for the Republicans at some point in the future. But for now, this is the last time a Democrat was elected for governor in all 50 states. So let me know in the comments, are you surprised by South Dakota being the longest drought of any state going back to the 1970s? Which other state surprised you the most, and which state might snap its streak the soonest? Let me know what you think down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to help support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.